Hello guys, today we are really jumping into programming with C++ with a topic that might not be that interesting, but it's important. Variables and data types. So let's rename this text that we are writing to the console to C++ data types. And then we start with one of the simplest type, which is bool, the boolean, and you can assign true or false. Another very simple one is the character, the same as for C#. You see the languages are very similar. It has almost the same keywords as in C#. For the character it's char and you can assign one character. But how about, let's try to assign more characters just to see what happens. We don't get an error indication in the IDE as we are doing this. No hint, no warnings, no signs. So let's build the project, right click onto the project and press build. And then we get at least a warning that our value will be truncated. So let's see what this means when we are printing this to the standard out, to the console. You know this from the previous part, std cout and then these two less signs, the operator to print to the standard out. And this time I also want to print out the size of the variables, and this can be done by using the size of function. It returns the amount of memory in bytes that these variables allocate in memory, and here you can see a character needs 1 byte. And the other characters that we try to assign are just removed. Okay, so we can get rid of these and continue with the next data type, which is an integer, int. Again, same as in C#, at least the keyword. And you can also assign a negative value, it is signed. This means positive and negative 32 bits. If you don't believe it, let's print it out. The copy and paste pattern and just replace here the variable. Okay, here we have it, 4 bytes, but now comes the truth. For the most compilers and systems, it is 4 bytes. But it could be that you are developing for an embedded system and you have a compiler that reserves 2 bytes for an int. Okay, if you want to be on the safe side and you want your variable to be 32 bits, then use the fixed width data types, and for the integer this is int 32_t. By the way, 1, I recommend to use these data types. By the way, 2, there are also unsigned versions of these types. Here you see it, 4 bytes in memory, and when you use, for example, int 64_t, then you can be sure to have 8 bytes for your variable. Again, print it out, 8 bytes. There is int 8, 16, 32 and 64. Alright, these are the whole numbers, but we also have floating points. The first one is float, like that with a decimal point. And it has 4 bytes. If you need a higher precision for your floating point, you can use double to get the double precision of a float. 8 bytes, by the way. Let's print them all. And here we see the values and the sizes. Alright, these are the simple data types, the most common ones. But now let's turn to strings. The old C strings are really hard to handle. These strings are just arrays of characters, which makes sense, but if you don't have a kind of wrapper convenience layer for this, it is not that much fun to work with it. You can define your array of characters like that, assign your text, but trust me when I say that it is quite ugly to work with this in a dynamic way, like getting substrings or appending strings or stuff like that. But you know what, let's forget about this. For strings, let's start with the built-in STL library, which is a great API for modern C++ that every C++ programmer nowadays uses, which has a string class, an own data type, which wraps up the character stuff nicely. So we define a variable of type string like that, very simple. And with this you have the possibility, for instance, to append another string by using this notation plus equals. By the way, this is just another notation for writing as value is as value plus a string. Just a nice shortcut. And then we print this out, but I guess we don't want to know the size that it has in memory, we want to know the actual string length. And for this you can use a so-called method, a function of the string class, and this is the method size. Don't forget the braces for function calls. And now let's see, when we print this, it has a length of 40. You can count it now if you don't trust the method. And this is what I wanted to show for the simple data types as a kind of getting started for C++. And of course you can use now the operators, for example, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I guess this is something that you know already, but in the next one we will go more into depth for conditional programming with if-else, switch cases, loops. But then comes the real fun object-oriented programming. We start with structs and then classes. So stay tuned, don't miss a lesson. It will become more and more difficult and interesting. If you like these programming tutorials and my channel, then don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And also don't forget to hit this notification bell. If you have any questions, then add these to the comments below. And I'll see you in the next one here on Jayanam.